So, to kick off our deep dive today, I want you to imagine that you're trying to walk across this, massive, completely untouched field of deep snow.
Oh, that sounds brutally exhausting.
Right, it really is. I mean, that very first time you cross it, it's a nightmare. You're lifting your knees up to your chest, you're sweating. You are basically fighting for every single inch.
You're forging the path.
Exactly. But then, say the next day, you take that exact same path. You step right in your own footprints. And it's a tiny bit easier.
Makes sense.
And you do this for weeks.
Yeah.
And eventually you've packed down this really smooth, solid trail. I mean, you can practically sprint across it.
Right, because the resistance is gone.
Exactly. But let's say one day you decide, you need to forge a brand new path to a totally different destination.
Okay, so you have to step off the smooth trail.
Right. You step off into the deep snow again, and it's brutally hard. You're trudging along, trying to build this new route, and then you lose your balance.
Oh.
You stumble. And for just a second, you step right back onto that old, comfortable, deeply packed trail.
The immediate, almost instinctual reaction to that stumble is it's really fascinating because the human brain doesn't just say, whoops, I lost my footing.
No, of course not. It completely panics.
Exactly. It looks at that old packed down trail and just screams, well, I guess the new path is completely ruined. All that slogging through the snow was for nothing. I should just stay on the old trail forever.
It's so dramatic.
It is. But we do this with almost every behavior we try to change, right?
Yeah.
We visualize self-improvement as this incredibly fragile thing, like one misstep completely obliterates months of effort.
Which is just such a heavy, paralyzing way to navigate life. And honestly, that brings us to the core mission of our deep dive today.
Yeah, we have some great material to get into.
We really do. We want to completely dismantle how you think about setbacks. We want to take that suffocating, permanent word, failure, and totally reframe it.
Because it really needs reframing.
It does. Our source material today is this really profound piece of writing.
Right, written by Susan.
Yes, Susan. And her perspective is just, it's incredibly hard won. She's been sober for over 25 years.
Which is incredible.
It's amazing. And she writes extensively about the gritty, unglamorous reality of what actually works when you are trying to fundamentally change your life.
And I think it's important to point out that while the text specifically focuses on overcoming an alcohol habit, the frameworks we're exploring are completely universal.
Oh, 100%.
We are going to look at the absolute anatomy of a setback.
Right.
The goal here is to equip you with the exact mental tools to stop a downward spiral the very second it starts.
Right. Whether you're trying to quit a substance or maybe stop doom scrolling or even fix your budget.
Exactly. We are talking about taking the paralyzing weight of shame and converting it into highly actionable data.
So, to get right into it, there is this surprising fact the author shares right at the beginning of the text. And I found it honestly incredibly comforting.
Her own story, right?
Yeah, she didn't just have an epiphany one day, decide to be sober, and walk perfectly into the sunset.
It's rarely like that.
Right. Her very first attempt at sobriety lasted 9 whole months. 9 months of packing down that new path in the snow.
That is a long time.
It is. And then she slipped a 9-month streak. Just broken. And I think society trains us to view that as the ultimate catastrophe.
Like she lost everything.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the text argues that what happens immediately after that slip is actually the most critical juncture of the entire journey.
It's the make or break moment.
Yeah. She poses this very simple, heavy question, which is, does relapse mean I failed?
And her answer in the text is an unequivocal no.
Just a flat no.
Right. When we break down the behavioral mechanics of what is actually happening during a setback, a relapse is simply a signal. That's all it is.
A signal of what, exactly?
It indicates that a specific behavioral cycle was not interrupted in that exact moment. That's it. It just means that temporarily the gravitational pull of the old habit was, it was stronger than the friction of the new plan you had in place.
Okay, I hear you, but let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Sure, go for it.
If someone is trying to quit smoking, right, and they go a whole month without a cigarette, their body is physically healing. The nicotine is leaving their system.
Right, physiologically they're recovering.
Yeah, but if they slip and they smoke half a pack on a really stressful Tuesday, chemically speaking, their brain is flooded with nicotine all over again.
That's true.
So aren't they physically back to square one? Hasn't the progress actually been completely erased?
It's a really common misconception, but no, they are not back to square one. You have to separate the acute chemical reaction from the neural scaffolding they've been building.
The scout.
Yeah, think back to your snow metaphor. Yes, they stepped onto the old path. But stepping onto the old path does not magically summon a blizzard that fills in the new path they've spent a month packing down.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to picture it.
The new neural pathways, like the routines of waking up without a cigarette, of driving to work without a cigarette, those are still there. The brain has still undergone neuroplastic change.
So the infrastructure is still intact.
Exactly. A slip is a single event where the old habit won the moment. It doesn't instantly bulldoze the new infrastructure.
That makes a lot of sense. The new path is still there. You just, aren't standing on it right now.
Exactly.
So why on earth does the brain instantly try to turn that single moment into a permanent identity? Like, why do we go from I made a mistake today to I am a hopeless disaster and I'll never, ever change?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is arguably the single biggest trap in any habit change process. The reason the brain jumps to I am a disaster is tied to a concept called cognitive dissonance.
Okay, let's break that down for someone who maybe hasn't taken a psychology class recently.
Fair enough.
What exactly is cognitive dissonance in the context of, trying to break a bad habit?
So cognitive dissonance is the intense psychological discomfort you feel when your actions contradict your beliefs or your self-image.
Okay.
So if your new self-image is, I am a person who goes to the gym and eats healthy, and then you find yourself eating a whole pizza on the couch, your brain experiences massive friction.
Right. Because those two things don't match.
Exactly. It literally hurts mentally. You have two conflicting realities. To relieve that pain, the brain needs to align your actions and your identity.
So it has to pick one.
Right. And the easiest, lowest energy way to do that is to simply downgrade your identity. The brain just says, well, I ate the pizza, so I guess I'm just a lazy person who can't stick to a diet.
Wow. So calling yourself a failure is actually just the brain's bizarre way of seeking relief from that friction.
It is an escape hatch. And it's incredibly dangerous because shame is a paralyzing emotion.
Yeah, it really makes you freeze up.
When you say, I am hopeless, you are giving yourself permission to stop trying. Because, if you're hopeless, effort is pointless. Shame feeds the old habit.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It really is.
Yeah.
But the brilliance of the source material is how it short-circuits this entire process. By viewing the slip strictly as information, you instantly strip away all that emotional baggage.
You just refuse the escape hatch.
Precisely. Suddenly, you aren't a failure sitting in the dark beating yourself up.
Yeah.
You are an investigator with a job to do.
You don't need shame, you need information. That is like a core thesis from the text.
The whole foundation.
But, knowing you need data and actually gathering it are two very different things, especially when your brain is actively trying to pull the fire alarm of shame.
Oh, the brain will fight you on it.
So how do you actually intercept that? How do you perform this post-relapse audit before the downward spiral really kicks in?
The author outlines this really forensic process. It's essentially a series of specific questions you must ask yourself as soon as possible after a setback.
While the memory is still fresh.
Exactly. You are basically reconstructing the scene of the crime. You ask things like, where were you? Who were you with? What were you feeling emotionally and physically?
Right.
And crucially, what did you tell yourself right before you made the choice to slip?
Oh, man. That internal monologue piece is so tricky. Because our brains are like world-class defense attorneys for our worst habits.
They really are. They're so convincing.
Yeah. Like if I want to skip a workout, my brain doesn't just say, hey, be lazy today.
No, it rationalizes it.
Right. It crafts this beautiful or tight argument about how rest is actually scientifically optimal for muscle recovery. And, I'm actually doing my body a favor by sitting on the couch.
The brain is an energy conservation machine at its core. It will always seek the path of least resistance. And by asking these specific forensic questions, you are looking for the variables that led your brain to choose that path. You're looking for the why behind the what's.
And the text points out something very unglamorous about this why. It notes that, especially early on in changing a habit, simply avoiding the physical environments that triggered the behavior is one of the smartest things you can do.
It sounds obvious, but it's true.
The author essentially says it's not rocket science, but people hate admitting it. And it's so true. It's like trying to diet while sitting inside a bakery.
Which is just setting yourself up to fail.
Exactly. We have this weird ego thing where we want to white-knuckle our way through temptation. It's like trying to cure a severe sunburn while refusing to get out of the tanning bed. We just think, if I'm really strong, the UV rays won't hurt me.
It's pure ego. We want to believe our willpower is this impenetrable shield. But willpower isn't a character trait. It is a highly exhaustible cognitive resource.
You run out of it.
You do. What this audit highlights is the concept of the setup. Human beings are cyclical. Our behaviors just don't occur in a vacuum.
So there's always a lead up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's say you do this audit, and you realize that for the last 3 times you slipped, it happened on a Thursday evening, right after a standing call with a particularly difficult client.
Oh, I've been there.
Right. That timing isn't a coincidence. That is a piece of data. That is the setup.
It's like gathering storm clouds. You thought it was just a random bolt of lightning, but actually the conditions were brewing all afternoon.
And if you can identify the specific excuse that appeared in your head, like, I survived that client call, I deserve a reward, you just mapped the entire trap.
You see exactly how it works.
The habit only wins when it operates below your conscious awareness, like on autopilot. The goal of the audit is to drag that entire mechanism into the bright light.
Because if you know exactly what the setup looks like, you can step in hours before the actual craving even hits.
Yeah.
But let's look at the reality of that moment right after a slip. Because gathering data assumes you are operating rationally.
Which you usually aren't.
No, usually you are in a highly volatile emotional state. And there is this massive psychological trap that happens right there. It's a lie the brain tells to justify just throwing in the towel completely. Let's dig into the danger zones.
Yeah, this is a critical warning from the material. It's what we can call the might as well trap.
Oh, I know this one too well.
In psychology, it's often referred to as the abstinence violation effect. You have a slip, and instantly the brain says, well, I've already messed up the day, I might as well keep going.
Right. You eat one cookie that wasn't on your meal plan, and the brain says, well, if the diet is ruined, might as well eat the entire sleeve and just start again on Monday.
It's so common.
It's insidious because in that split second, it feels like actual logic. It feels like a mathematical fact that the day is a wash.
That's because the old neural pathway is fighting for survival. It really wants you back on that packed-down snow trail.
That's desperate.
Very. It uses a single, isolated slip-up as a Trojan horse to bring back the entire routine. The author makes a powerful distinction here. A slip is a moment. It is a discrete event in time.
Just a blip.
Right. It does not have to become a full-blown relapse into the old lifestyle. The might as well trap is entirely designed to blur the line between a momentary lapse and total surrender.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because fighting that trap brings us to the myth of starting from zero.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about how society views a broken streak as a total catastrophe.
The whole back to square one idea.
Yeah, but the author argues the exact opposite. If you had several successful days and then you slipped, those successful days still count. You prove to yourself that you can interrupt the routine.
Yes.
But here is my question. How do we actually convince ourselves of that in the heat of defeat?
It's tough.
Because when you slip, it feels like losing to a boss in a video game, you know, and the screen just goes black. It viscerally feels like you are back at level 1 staring at the start menu.
You fight that feeling by grounding yourself in the reality of the data we just gathered.
Okay.
Think about it. When you play that video game and you lose to the boss, you don't actually lose all your progress because you, the player sitting on the couch, now possess new knowledge.
Oh, right. You know the boss's moves.
Exactly. You learned that when the boss's eyes glow red, you need to dodge to the left. That is highly valuable intelligence.
That's a really good point.
The text frames this beautifully. It says it is progress with a lesson attached. You are not starting from zero. You are starting from experience. You now know exactly where your current boundaries and weak spots are.
Progress with a lesson attached. That totally flips the narrative. Instead of I lost everything, it becomes I just paid a very high tuition fee for a masterclass in my own psychological triggers.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. I like that. However, the author acknowledges a harsh reality here. Having this intellectual retroactive understanding is one thing, but actually fighting back against a tricky dopamine-starved brain the next time you were tempted, that is a completely different battlefield.
Right. Because when that craving hits on a Thursday at 5 p.m., your brain isn't exactly eager to sit down and review your forensic data spreadsheet.
not at all.
Your prefrontal cortex, like the logical long-term planning center, is basically getting hijacked. It just wants the quick fix. So what is the actual mechanism for fighting back in that micro moment?
Well, the text mentions a tool detailed in the author's course, 66 days to break the nightly drinking habit.
Ah, yes, the somatic marker. What exactly is a somatic marker?
The concept of a somatic marker is arguably the most powerful tool in this entire framework. A somatic marker is a physiological response, a visceral feeling in your body that your brain associates with a particular outcome.
Okay, so a physical feeling tied to a memory.
Yes. And the problem when a craving hits is that the brain engages in what's called euphoric recall.
Euphoric recall.
Yeah, it only remembers the temporary relief, the initial dopamine hit, the relaxation. It conveniently edits out all the negative consequences.
It just deletes the bad parts.
Exactly. Somatic markers are a tool to aggressively force the brain to remember the full outcome.
I picture it like your brain acting as this shady movie studio. When you are tempted, it only wants to play the exciting, action-packed, 2-minute movie trailer of the habit.
Just the highlights.
Right, the trailer makes it look incredible. But utilizing a somatic marker forces you to sit down in the theater, lock the doors, and watch the terrible, agonizing, incredibly boring 3-hour movie that actually follows.
That analogy is spot on. It's about intensely recalling the physical and emotional toll, the headache, the nausea, the anxiety. Or as the author vividly describes it in her own experience, waking up at 3 a.m. with dread, a pounding heart, and a dry mouth.
Ugh, that 3 a.m. dread is so relatable, but how do you actually do that? If the logical part of your brain is offline during a craving, how do you successfully force it to play the 3-hour movie instead of the 2-minute trailer?
By preloading the association before you ever need it.
Preloading it?
Yes. You cannot wait until the craving hits to try and conjure up a somatic marker. It requires active rehearsal when you are calm.
So you have to practice feeling bad.
Sort of, yes.
Yeah.
You write it down. You vividly visualize that 3 a.m. dread. You remember exactly how your stomach felt, how the shame felt in your chest.
You really marinate in it.
You do. You build that mental roadblock so thoroughly that the next time the thought of the habit arises, it is inextricably linked to that physical feeling of dread.
Yeah.
You are using the brain's own associative mechanisms against the old habit.
So you're basically rewiring the alarm system so it goes off before you open the door instead of, after the house is already robbed.
What's fascinating here is how this shifts the balance of power entirely back to personal responsibility. You cannot travel back in time.
No.
The slip occurred, the action was taken. But the next choice, that is entirely yours. And that next choice is the exact friction required to stop the slide.
It's all about that pivot.
Right. The author even wrote a specific guide for this precarious moment called, "What do I do when I feel like drinking again?" It emphasizes that having a plan ready before the voice gets loud is the absolute key to survival.
Sitting here listening to all of this, it is such a profound paradigm shift. To quickly recap the ground we've covered from the source material today.
We covered a lot.
We did. First, we established that a relapse or a setback is just information. It is not an identity.
Yeah.
Your brain wants to use cognitive dissonance to call you a failure, but you have to reject that.
Absolutely.
Second, you have to watch out for the might as well trap, which tries to trick you into turning a stumble into a total surrender.
A very dangerous trap.
Very. Third, you must remember that your progress is never erased. It is progress with a lesson attached. And finally, you have to preload those somatic markers so you remember the agonizing 3-hour movie, not just the thrilling 2-minute trailer.
And if we look at the ultimate so what of this entire deep dive, why does unpacking all this behavioral science actually matter for your daily life?
Yeah, what's the bottom line?
It's because making the conscious shift from punishing shame to objective curiosity is how you fundamentally regain agency.
Shame versus curiosity.
Right. Shame demands that you hide in the dark and stay paralyzed. Curiosity requires you to turn on the lights, examine the room, and figure out exactly how the trap was set.
I love that.
Once the lights are on, you stop being a victim of your habits and you start becoming the architect of your behavior. You finally interrupt the cycle.
Which brings us right back to that snowy field from the beginning. A slip doesn't mean the new trail is gone. It just means you found a patch of ice you didn't know was there.
And now you know.
Exactly.
Now you know.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Okay.
The author applies these frameworks brilliantly to the world of sobriety. But look closely at your own life. What is a failure you've been carrying around, a heavy label you've just slapped onto your own identity, that is actually just an uninterrupted cycle quietly waiting for you to sit down, turn on the lights, and read the data? It's an essential question. Thank you for exploring these insights with us.
We deeply appreciate you taking the time to join this conversation. Whatever you're working towards, whatever your new trail looks like, take a breath, look at the data, and make that critical next step. Catch you on the next deep dive.